Okay, so I'm going to start my speech here in a little bit. I just wanted to emphasize that I'm using my hands, I'm moving around, I'm not going to simply just be a voice. I'm going to act like this is a normal speech in front of an audience, and I'm going to use a presentation of pictures like I did in my informative speech to show my point a little better. So I'm going to stand right here. That looks good. You can see me good. You can see my hands good. So I'm going to start my speech right now. Look outside. You'll see mountains. You'll see trees. You'll see currently a snowstorm. My point is, you'll see nature. Now, you may have come to Montana or you lived in Montana your whole life, and you may do it for your own reasons. But for me personally, my reason was for the great outdoors. And I just love my job. I absolutely love my job. I spend my summers in the Forest Service working on trails. I've done it for the past 3 seasons, and I've seen both sides of the government in doing so. I've seen the frustrating side, and I've seen the rewarding side. When I got my surveys back, I figured that most people would see nature as important in Montana. And I was right. 8 out of 10 of you say that it's important. I also was surprised to see that most people knew how much public land there was in Montana. According to a Billings Gazette article, about 29% of Montana is publicly owned. So it might come as a surprise to you that a federal employee might think that the federal government isn't paying attention to the agency. And that's exactly what happened. I think the Forest Service is not funded enough. It cannot fight fires in the mountains, and it cannot provide recreation for hikers and trail campers and hunters and fishers at the same time with the current budget that it has. I'm not going to get into inflation or whether the budget went up or down. That's not my point. My goal here is to introduce to you the structure of the Forest Service and why the budget we have is not able to actively do its job. So let's start by talking about wildfires. Wildfires are getting larger, they're getting hotter, they're becoming more frequent than they were 70 years ago. And that is coming from my professor in fire management, Dr. Phil Higuera. To back his claim, I did some research and found an article by Zachary Holden, wrote in 2018, that the average precipitation for summer went down as far as 45% in the last 37 years. That's pretty substantial, but we don't need to read a periodical to figure that out. In 2017, Missoula was filled with smoke by the Low Peak and Rice Ridge fires. We experienced a summer where we had 45 days straight without rain. And this influences our way of life, but it also influences industries here in Montana. The timber industry, according to Northwestern Management, a forest management company with expertise in fire management and forestry, said that on average, timber industries have 6 to 12 months after a fire to get whatever they can out of that forest in terms of timber before they can no longer sell it. On top of that, we have increased fuel load that causes these high severity fires. Fuel load, by Phil Higuera definitions, is dead wood on the ground. Just the natural process, we gain more fuel every year, and the Forest Service and other agencies actively reduce fuel, but it requires a lot of manpower, and it's something that we don't have because our budget is too low to support it. And now when I'm talking about the active fuel reduction, I'm talking about public lands across Montana. I'm talking about 30% of the state needs to actively reduce its fuel. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about how increased fire causes increased erosion, floods, blowouts. You can see in this picture here that this drainage blew out the trail completely. and we had to reinstitute it. This is a pretty extreme example, but it's happened in the same place 2 years in a row. And if you want even more evidence, you can just look at the Missoula Clark Fork River over by Reserve Street in 2018, where we experienced flooding. The reason for this is explained by Kevin Hyde, professor in my soils, water, and climate class. He stated that the soil burned so hot that the roots are burned away, and those roots are hooks to the earth. Without it, the soil erodes away and washes out with any large rainstorm or snowmelt, spring thaw. So because our fires are burning hotter and they're getting larger, we're spending more money fighting them. To quote The Guardian, 65% of a $5 billion budget was used to fight fire in 2015, in quotes. This means that they're spending more time and more money fighting fire than what we can do as a trail worker personally, what we can do to keep our trails in good condition. The example here in this photograph, you can't even see the trail. In fact, my coworker is standing right on it, but the ash has erased any evidence of a trail. But you don't need to even be around fire to see erosion and to see that trails are starting to disappear. This is just a picture to show the natural erosion process and how much work goes into reinstituting a trail on a hillside. Chances are a year from now, that trail will be in the same state that it was before we worked on it, in the left picture shown. So because wildland fire gets more of the budget, and trails become an afterthought. Backcountry trails, small trails, see this first, and then it trickles down to the main trails. What I mean is that you start to see the main trails turn into a highway, like this picture here. This is a problem because we are just focusing our impact, we're funneling our impact onto one trail, and we can't have that because it's going to cause more erosion, more infrastructure damage. There's more impact. You'll see trash on the ground. If we have an area where the impact is spread out, our impact on the soil and on nature is reduced significantly. On top of that, you have your secret spots, your own little hunting cabins or your own little hunting nook and fishing pond that you fancy, and you don't want anybody to go there. But if you can't get there yourself, there's no point. So what do we do about this? Now, my solution is simple. We increase the budget. We increase the budget for the Forest Service so that we can fight fires and we can maintain our trails. We can actively contain larger fires with more people. We can reduce the fuel load so that way these high severity fires don't happen, so that we don't have a rice ridge or a low peak. We can also get to our favorite spots because our trails are being maintained by our trail workers. But aside from the sentimental and the ecological, there's the economical too. The recreation industry accounts for over $880 billion added to the economy every year. And that's coming from Newswire in 2019 or 2016, sorry. That's a valuable industry to the economy. And if the Forest Service gets a higher budget, that means recreation has more opportunity to grow. So the solutions are simple and they're very short. But to wrap things up, wildfires are getting worse. We've seen it through climate change, and we know that by just looking out our front door that the fire seasons are getting worse. The Forest Service budget is not well equipped to fight fires and maintain trails. It just is not possible to do it. And the more that we think we can do it on this budget, the more trails are going to close, the more campgrounds are going to have fees, the more we're going to see our fires going out of control. If we increase our budget, we can prevent all of that. And the way that we do it is we call our officials, we call our senators, congressmen, and governors, and we tell them that we want to support an industry that supports our economy. We want to support the Forest Service so that we can support recreation. And that way, that money goes into our pockets. I mean, some of you probably have an REI card, which makes you a shareholder. But that's beside the point. At the end of the day, we are nature lovers. Montanans love nature, and we have to decide as Montanans whether we enjoy going out and hiking or if we like going out and choking on smoke. Thank you.